Hi, hello friends, this is Rajkumar. Today in this video we are going to see Robert Frost's poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Before we see the poem, we should know about Robert Frost and his writings. Robert Frost was an American poet, all you know. Initially his work was published in England before it was published in America. He is well known for his realistic descriptions of rural life in his poetry. He was the only poet during his lifetime to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. Though Robert Frost was an American poet, his poetry was engaged with the New England locales, identities and themes. His first poem, My Butterfly, gave him a status as a professional poet. The poem was published in the New York newspaper called The Independent. Frost had published 2 full-length collections of poems. They were A Boy's Will and A North of Boston. Then his reputation became so high. During 1920s, he was most celebrated poet in America. His other notable works were New Hampshire, A Further Range, and In the Clearing. Robert Frost's poem Mending Wall was one of the most famous poems from the collections of North of Boston. This poem Mending Wall described the friendly argument between the speaker and his neighbor as they had different attitudes towards boundaries. Next we see Robert Frost's another poem, Mountain Interval, was a poem of premeditation ignited by an object, person or event. And other poems were Bridges, The Road Not Taken, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening were remarkable one. Robert Frost was a poetic genius during his lifetime. What I discussed about Robert Frost is a small part of his works. There are plenty of works to be discussed and about Robert Frost too. So must read Robert Frost in detail. Okay, let's see the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. It was written in 1922 and was published in New Hampshire volume in 1923. As far as the theme is concerned, the poem describes the thoughts of the speaker who is alone in his wagon and stops his wagon to watch the snow which is falling in the woods. He was wondered by this scene and at the same time he was unable to move from the place. But he has to go as he has commitments and promises in his life. Okay, now let's see the poem. Okay, see the first stanza of the poem. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The speaker of the poem thinks that he knows whose woods are, and he thinks he may living in a nearby village. Further, the speaker of the poem believes that the owner of the woods will not see him because of the snow settled on the trees which will guide him. And he starts to appreciate the woods. On the whole, the first stanza shows that the narrator's experience to see a forest during a winter time. Okay, next we see the second stanza of the poem. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. In the second stanza, the narrator says that his horse find it strange and asking itself why not stopped by a farmhouse. It seems not new to the horse because the narrator is doing it repeatedly. Okay, with that we shall move on to the third stanza of the poem. He gives his horn's belch a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. In the third stanza, the narrator says that his horse makes a little step and shakes its bells which is attached to his harness, as it thinks that the narrator forgets the correct address of their destination. But due to the wind and snowfall, the tingling of the horse sound was suppressed. Further, this stanza reveals about the relationship between the narrator and the horse. Okay, then we see the last stanza of the poem. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The narrator in this stanza beautifies the forest. He says the woods are lovely, dark and deep. Then he stresses that he has a lot of distance to reach his destination. The last two lines of the stanza has a very deep meaning. The narrator says that he has miles to go before I sleep. The narrator says he has long time before his death, and another line which stresses that he has his stars and promises to keep until his sleep. Okay, above all, the poem is very easy to read. We can enjoy the descriptions of the nature and attitude of a person, and it is a philosophical poem too. So, and want to know more about this poem must read in detail. And thanks for watching this video. For more videos, subscribe the channel. Thank you.